Hello and welcome to Hexa Talk, industry refresher powered by Hexanica. I'm your host Aditi Iyer, and today we are live with Yogesh Pandit, CEO and co-founder of Hexanica. All right. Welcome, Yogesh.
Thank you, Aditi, and I'm sure you have another interesting topic to speak about data-driven organization. So pleasure to meet you again, and please let me know what we are going to speak about today.
Absolutely. So keeping pace with the technology demands has always been a concern for small players in the financial industry. And community banks and credit unions have growing concerns with the providers over unfavorable, expensive contracts and mediocre digital offerings that make it increasingly more challenging to compete with larger banks. So the problem with community banks and credit unions are that they are depending on service providers, but the service providers aren't able to deliver the community banks what they want. What's your opinion on this?
So Aditi, great topic for today, especially as we speak about data-driven organization. And in fact, just earlier this week, I met with a few CEOs of community banks. And in that meeting, actually, there was also few entrepreneurs who are building state-of-art core banking systems. They've already built one and they're building one more. And during the conversation towards the end, exactly this topic came up, Aditi, where they mentioned that, hey, by the way, we are working with our core banking system providers, and there are some restrictions in terms of how do we get the data. If we get the data, it's in different formats. That was the other thing that Chris, one of the CEOs there, mentioned. And that triggered my point that, hey, by the way, even when the CEOs of community banks today, even if they want to do it, they're not able to do it. And one of the constraints in the previous session, if you remember, I told you 4 topics: culture, people, technology, and process as the problems to build data-driven organization. But somewhere in this, maybe you can align this to technology and process. Actually, are there service providers? Because smaller institutions depend almost 80-90% on their technology service providers or other forms of service providers. And these service providers, by the way, I have great respect for. So whether it's FIS, Pfizer, Jack Henry, or any other, right? There are so many new providers today as well. They have built great softwares. Don't get me wrong. I mean, these banks have been depending on these softwares for a number of years. But where I feel there is some gap is these building a software, and as I mentioned in the previous topic, and building a data-driven software, data-driven organization is like building a car with the design of petrol engine and on batteries. If you remember, that's what my example was. And consistent to that, these providers are thinking of building data solutions in the way they have built softwares, and that will fail. You cannot build data-driven organization with the same mindset. And I think that is where these service providers, which should have done something 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe, still do not have these solutions that these community banks and credit unions need. And these credit unions, to do it themselves, they don't have resources. They don't have technologies. So they are right now, if I can say, stuck in a catch-22 situation. What am I supposed to do? My service provider, who have traditionally kept the data, now they are open to giving me the data. but I don't have any processes, I don't have any people, and I don't have even thought process of how to build a data-driven organization. So, we launched a solution for community banks and credit unions last year, and I have been myself wondering how to help these institutions, especially the ones that are smaller. And I believe that these service providers need to update themselves very, very, very fast. From my standpoint, I feel one of the best ways for these community banking associations is to partner with a fintech company and align with the service providers, or the service providers align with fintech companies and work with community banks and credit unions. So that may be a very long answer to your question, but that is my reaction, Aditi.
So if a replacement is needed, what are the other options?
Yeah, as I towards the end of the previous answer I was alluding to, one option is obviously, if you have the bandwidth, if you have the resources, then hire and build your own processes. And I see, especially mid-size institutions, or even some of the institutions that are close to 2 billion and above, they are building processes and technologies. One mistake that they're doing is, while they are building it, they are not adopting the new stack, which is a low-code, no-code based data solutions. They are still going to traditional methodologies, and I think that is a mistake. If you want to do, there are various utilities available in all the cloud providers, whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, or whether it's GCP, Google, and there are others like Oracle and others as well. But you need to adopt no-code, low-code environments. You don't need to do traditional data processes management systems to actually get into a data-driven organization and add a lot of data engineers. So that is one of the options that you have today. And the second thing is collaboration. I don't think there is any other option today. You cannot build everything internally. Collaborating with nimble fintech, I think, is perhaps the best way of doing it. There are ready-made solutions in the marketplace of these cloud providers, and I think that is one of the ways of doing it, because there is already pre-validation done by these cloud providers of the solutions that are in marketplace. So that is something that I would say.
Sharing your perspective on the topic, Yogesh. Would you like to conclude the discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. What I feel is that community bank, as I mentioned, who are in this catch-22 situation, I don't think the option is not to work with these service providers, right? These service providers are providing the core services that a bank needs, that cannot be eliminated. So I think there is a need for community banks to demand from these core providers that, hey, we need some simple, smart, and efficient solutions. We need to use our data for knowing our customers, cross-selling to customers, perhaps making the compliance self-sufficient or self-serviced, and that push needs to come from the community banks and credit unions to the service providers, because I don't think just because there is negativities, if I can say, towards these service providers, they are going anywhere. They are going slow, but they are providing a lot of valuable other services that banks need to depend on, whether it's the deposit systems, lending systems, payment systems, and others. So they do have value, but collaborating with your service providers, fintech companies, is the best answer as of now to move ahead, to be a data-driven organization. Aditi.
Thank you, Yogesh. It was an insightful session.
Thank you. That was a great session indeed.